Hello students and welcome to Toppscholars. Today we'll be talking about another very interesting topic, that is agents of pollination. So students, let us first understand what is meant by pollination. Now, pollination is a very important and essential step in plant reproduction. To be precise, pollination is basically the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther of the flower to the stigma. The stigma is the receptive part of the flower. Now students, for this particular transfer, it requires certain agents. These agents are called as the pollination agents or the pollinators. Okay students, so pollination requires agents known as pollinators to carry the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma, which is the receptive part of the female reproductive organ. Next, we move to the characters of the flowers seen in the flowers which are pollinated by wind. So we are talking about wind pollination, also known as anemophily. Now students, in this case, the flowers are comparatively very small, because as they don't need to attract insects, there is no point in being large and very attractive. So these are very small flowers. They are not at all brightly colored, again because they don't need to attract insects. They do not have any nectar, nor do they emit any scent. Moving on students, they have very long stamens which hang out of the flower and are exposed to the wind. Students, this is there because if there are any pollen grains in the wind and if the stamen is hanging out, it will be easy for the stigma to catch the pollen. Moving on students, the anthers are also large. They are very loosely attached to filaments which help in versatile movement due to the wind. Moving on, many pollen grains are produced to compensate for the loss due to the wind flow. See students, the wind might take the pollen grains in all possible directions. So to make sure that at least some pollen grains reach the stigma of particular flowers, it is necessary to have a large number of pollen grains. That is the reason many pollen grains are produced. Okay. Moving on students, the pollen grains are very light. They are dry and smooth, which helps in easy movement due to the wind. Also students, they have feathery stigmas that hang out of the flowers to capture the pollen grains present in the wind very easily. Now let us take a look at some examples. Now wind pollination is seen in plants like maize, grass, rice, wheat, etc. Next we have the pollination done by bats. Now students, in this case the flowers are large and they produce large amount of nectar, again because the pollinating agent, that is the bat, is a large animal. Moving on, the flowers also emit a fruity odor. Example, Anthocephalus. Moving on students, next finally we have something called as artificial pollination. That is the pollination which is performed by humans. Now students, in this case, the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma artificially by humans. For artificial pollination, it is necessary to decide which particular flower or which particular plant is the female and which one is the male. This helps to produce new variety of plant. Now students, in this case what is done is anthers in young flowers are removed. Now tell me what will happen if a flower is bisexual and you remove the anthers. Can I say that you have made that flower only a female flower? Yes. This process is therefore known as emasculation, because once you remove the anthers, you are choosing that flower as the one to be the female. Now the other flower is supposed to be the male. So this way we can ensure that the flowers are selected and we can produce different varieties. Now once the flower is emasculated, that is, it is turned into a female flower, then it is covered with a plastic bag. Can you think of a reason why? This is to make sure that no other pollen grains fall on the stigma of this emasculated flower. Moving on, students, now by using the pollens from desired varieties of plants, the flowers are artificially pollinated.
To learn more about this topic, download Toppscholars app.